EAGLES, Eagles.
Eagles fans, welcome back to another edition of Football 24/7. I'm your guy, Tone DeShields II. I'm joined by our Eagles insider, our specialist, John McMullen. Make sure you guys continue to smash that like button. Also, make sure you guys are subscribed to the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. All the support, all the love, all the traction that you guys provide to the channel really helps. So make sure you guys are on the right side of history and make sure you guys are on the right side of your Philadelphia sports talk. And on top of that, make sure you guys go check out John, not only on JAKIBsports.com, but also check him out on SI.com. Sports Illustrated, he does great work for those guys. He's an amazing writer, always provides great insight, always provides an objective take. No matter if you like it, you love it, or you hate it, John is always going to give it to you straight, no chaser. So, John, before we get too deep into the content, off air, we were talking a little bit, and every time we speak, one of the first things I always ask you is how you feeling, John? Was it a long day, so on and so forth? And typically the answer is the same. But, you said something pretty interesting, and I want to pick your brain a little bit. You've been around the block, and you've been in the sports industry for quite some time. You're well decorated, in my humble opinion. Full transparency, I checked your LinkedIn a long time ago. Never told you about it. But the point is, are the Philadelphia Eagles the most interesting team you've ever covered? And if not, what's been the most interesting team that you've covered in your history of covering pro sports?
They're the most active, so they keep things interesting from that perspective. But they're too good, so that's not interesting. So it depends how you look at it. Like today, Bradley Roby's in. They signed him. They're always trying to get better. You can never rest on this team. They're always, the other teams are slowing down. Guys have workouts. You'll see some practice squad signings. Players get injured, but Howie's always, focused on the prize and trying to get better. And today it was Bradley Roby. And by the way, I don't think that's necessarily precluding him from looking to further upgrade as the trade line approaches at the end of this month. So it's a team that's always doing stuff. And from that standpoint, they keep you on your toes. The most interesting teams, to be honest, are the ones who are more of a, how shall we say,
rebuilding.
The more controversy, the more dumb decisions, the more, like the Chicago Bears to me are the most interesting team to cover right now in the NFL. Those guys they got a lot to talk about because they're an abject mess. And that stuff tends to be a little bit more interesting. So it depends on your definition. But yeah, I covered a lot of those types of dysfunctional teams with Minnesota and Red McCombs when he was the owner. Those things are, they're a train wreck. So depends how you look at it. But the Eagles always keep you busy.
Well, let's hope you never end up in Chicago covering the Bears, because you're going to have a lot to answer for if you ever end up in Chicago.
They know, trust me. Well, look, fans are fans, and sometimes they don't like, as you pointed out, sometimes they don't like when you point out reality.
Right.
But if you're a fan of the Chicago Bears, yeah, I'm sorry, your team's a train wreck. But most Bears fans know that and understand it better than anyone. The Eagles are good, and Jody and I spend our time nitpicking. We're talking about 3rd and 11 calls after they win a game, or we're talking about people are incensed that they scored too soon. Oh, they scored too soon. I mean, yeah, other teams are trying to score and desperately trying to win games. Yeah, sometimes it gets a little comical here because, what are we, 21-1? I forget. I get it mixed up. 20-1 or 21-1. I forget. But it's been a hell of a run for this Eagles team.
Well, you said something pretty interesting, right? You know, you and Jody on Birds 365 every morning at 8 a.m. Eastern time. Shameless plug there. Um, you guys, you guys definitely like to peel back the layers as much as possible, and that begs the question, right? When you're covering a team that's been consistently relevant and consistently good and consistently stable, like the Philadelphia Eagles, is it actually a tougher cover because you have to be more creative in how you cover a team that's typically pretty straightforward, or rather I say pretty boring because they do everything so I guess by the book, I guess you'll say.
Well, this there's plenty. Don't get me wrong. There's plenty to talk about. Dallas Goddard. Why isn't he involved? I've talked about that. It's
Mm.
and Nick called it a small sample size, which it is. But we're talking about 4 games. In the old days, this would be um, the quarter pole of the season. So it's somewhat significant. I wouldn't say it's a concern. So
Yeah.
no,
Some would say 4 games is a trend.
yeah, by no means am I trying to say this team is perfect. And James Bradbury. I still say, and by the way, the Eagles proved it today. They understand that it's not a good idea to move him from outside cornerback into the slot long term, and that's why Bradley Roby is here, and that's why if he doesn't work, they'll try to find somebody else because they know he's really, really good. Um, so it's not all. By no means are they perfect, and they didn't win the Super Bowl, obviously. So um, there are always issues, but I think, fans in Philadelphia have been a little spoiled over the past year plus, I would say.
So you mentioned earlier, Eagles always trying to get better. Harry Roseman brings in Bradley Roby, a nickel corner. Can you fill us in on any details surrounding Bradley Roby? What do fans need? What do fans need to know about his game? What does he provide? Can you give us any insight on what he brings to the table?
Um, Former first round pick, for those who don't know, been around for a while, 2014 first round pick of Denver. It played, he's played significant slot snaps in his career, but he still played outside more than he's played inside. So, typical as a, um, as I said, former first round pick. Typically, you're not taking slot cornerbacks in the first round. So the hope was he would be an outside corner. As he's aged, um, he played the highest percentage of snaps in the slot last year with New Orleans. So he's comfortable there. We'll see how much he has left. The Eagles are going to start him on the practice squad. He's got to get in game shape. Number one, he's got to learn the defense. And, hey, they brought in Rashaan Evans for a couple days and we got a quick look at him and he was out the door. So nothing guaranteed when you're on the practice squad, but he's a fit and the Eagles need help at that particular position. So I think it's worth the dart throw to see what he has left.
So bringing him in, they're going to start him off on a practice squad. So the likelihood is we're not going to see him this Sunday. We're going to see him probably the following Sunday.
Yeah, I would say very doubtful for this Sunday. And, how it was described to me, and I'll give you the he's got to get in game shape. He's got to learn the defense and he'll be elevated at some point is what I was told. So that does not sound like this Sunday.
Okay.
So they're going to have to get him up to speed as quickly as possible. And I think, how they play this Sunday maybe will affect the urgency of how quickly they want to get him out there. If Cooper Kupp is back, that might be the best slot receiver in football if he's healthy. Now he hasn't been playing, so maybe you get a break there. I don't know how healthy Matthew Stafford is. He got banged up. But this is why I didn't like James Bradbury long term in the slot. Well, the bigger reason is he's too good outside, and you don't play outside cornerbacks. It's more difficult to find all pro outside cornerbacks. So you don't want to take him away from that. But secondly, he doesn't match up well with those small, quick guys. He's big, long corner. And I think the Eagles see the Rams on the schedule and they say, oh, we don't really have a slot corner. We better get a slot corner. And I'm not saying the Rams caused this because I don't expect him to be on the field. But, when it's placed right in front of your face, you say, oh. And I happen to see Zach McPherson today. He's still on crutches, still in the walking boot. It's ironic that I saw him today because people already forget the Zach injury, Avante. It's difficult when you lose multiple players at one position.
Yeah, that was the crazy thing about those two injuries. Both of those guys are slot guys, right? Avante Maddox, the starter. McPherson is the reliever. Help me out with my timeline here. Bradley Roby, he was drafted by Denver in 2014. Did he cross paths with the Vic Fangio staff? And is that one of the reasons why he's here, because of the connection that Fangio and Desai have?
No, he was he was out of Denver by maybe 2018 or 2019.
Yeah, 2018 was his last season in Denver, so 2019
Yeah,
he
so
spent in
after
Houston,
his rookie contract,
yeah.
And then he went to Houston, and
Right.
and then he went to New Orleans. So no, I just think it's, they need a slot corner. I don't
Okay.
think it's he's been around. This will be his 10th season. So I'd have to look through it. I haven't looked through the staffs yet. There might be somebody who has a history. But Vic got the Denver job in 2019, I believe. So Bradley
Missed him.
would have just been out of that would have been his first year out of Denver. So I don't think it has much to do with that. It's just they need a slot cornerback, and this is the best one they could find on the street. And he's got a lot of experience, and we'll see how it works out.
Yeah, it's interesting because this Eagles defense has been up and down, give or take, for the past 4 games. If the run game's working, the pass defense isn't working. And, they're ranked top 3 in the league in terms of stopping a run. They're ranked in the bottom third of the league in terms of defending the pass. I think they're ranked 27th when it comes to defending the pass. So clearly there's a disparity between run defense and pass defense. Many reasons for that. But, when you think about this pass defense and then you think about how it looked against Sam Howell, I'm always I want to always give players credit for performing, right? Sam Howell did what he was supposed to do. He played his best game of his career. It just so happens that the Eagles played their worst game of the season in terms from a pass defense perspective, in my opinion, especially on 3rd down. What's been your overall evaluation thus far of this defense, and where do you see it going from this point forward?
Well, I think, you piecemeal at the front has been really good. I think the linebackers have been up and down. They were really good against Washington. And I think the secondary has been up and down. And, in a lot of ways, you could say Sam Howell, had a really good game. And I think he's better than people realize. But it's always disappointing when you struggle against a young quarterback coming off a game that he had against Buffalo where he looked totally overmatched, and he's slinging the football all over the place at times. But you also have to realize Justin Evans wasn't out there. Sidney Brown wasn't out there. And that's on top of Avante and Zach and everybody else. So they had a lot of injuries. Bradbury playing out of position, Josh Jobe, they were trying to pick on Terrell Edmonds to a certain extent. It worked. But when you have that many players that you're leaning on outs, it makes some sense that you struggle a little bit. And then it becomes a chicken and the egg. I know Jody wanted, doesn't think the front held up. And maybe they got to, maybe you graded on the curve. Maybe they got to be better. They got to understand they got to do a little bit more to make up for the deficiencies on the back end. But I think the front has been really, really good. And that makes sense because they are really good.
But here's the thing. How do you see? Here's the thing, right? I love Jody, but I find it hard to believe. I mean, how can this defensive front do more when you couple it with these variables, right? Obviously, the Commanders got smacked by the Bills, and that didn't turn out too well for them. So you would expect them to come in and make an overcorrection, right? They struggled getting that ball out as quickly as they did against us, right? They were getting that ball out so fast. Eric Bieniemy schemed it right up,
yeah,
and how executed it damn near perfectly. But I mean, when I think about this defensive line in that game, they got 5 sacks, right? On top of that, they got pressure on the quarterback. Sam Howell just made some plays with his legs, and also on top of that, Washington, they ran for 107 yards, 28 attempts, but 6 of those attempts came by way of Sam Howell, who put up 40 yards on his own, and his longest run of the day was 20 yards. But between the running backs and the wide receivers that touched the rock in terms of the running game, I mean, that's 22 touches between running backs and a receiver, and that only amassed 67 rushing yards between the Commanders' running backs, and they averaged 3.8 yards per carry as a unit. But I believe the running backs averaged less than 3 yards per carry with their 67 rushing yards. So I think the defensive line played better than what we think. It's just the fact that Sam Howell got that ball out so fast, and on top of that, with this scheme, the DBs playing so far off the line of scrimmage, it made the defensive line seem like they weren't doing as much as they really were.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. Most people are box score people, and they want to see numbers in the box score, and they don't want to hear esoteric reasons. They don't want to.
But you got to pay attention. But to your point, if you're a numbers guy, you got to pay attention to all the numbers, right? And you got to extrapolate the numbers that matter. Like I said, those running backs didn't do anything really.
Yeah, well, they didn't do anything when the Washington beat the Eagles last year. They averaged,
that's true,
I think it was 3.3 yards per carry, but they were able to get conversions, stay on the field. The Eagles turned it over a bunch in that game last season at Lincoln Financial Field. It surprises people, but the Eagles' pressure percentage is higher this year than it was last year when they had 70 sacks. They were 25. I mentioned it on the show this morning. They were at 25.5% last year, which was second in the NFL. Through 4 games, they're at 29.3%. So they're even better, but they're not getting as many sacks. And I talk about this all the time. You mentioned, and I said coming into that game, I said, you're going to see an overcorrection from Washington because they played so poorly. And Sam Howell got the football out quicker than he has all year. That was the game plan. Get it out. Everybody comes in facing the Eagles. Get it out quick because everybody knows now. Kirk Cousins is prone to hanging on the football. His fastest time getting the football out was against the Eagles. Every single quarterback. That's sort of what happens when you have success rushing the passer. People try to adjust as much as possible. And yeah, they're better this year when it comes to pressuring the quarterback than last year. But last year, a lot of people didn't realize what the Eagles had up front until they started piling up those numbers. It started with Carson Wentz early in the season. And now the book is out on them. So people are making their adjustments. There's another team on the field always, Tone, and they don't just sit back. One of the things we were joking about, I go back to the Bears. It's so easy to criticize the Bears because Roquan Smith, Nicholas Morrow is the second graded running back in the linebacker in the NFL per Pro Football Focus. Number one is Roquan. Number one is Roquan Smith. Bears. They traded Roquan. They let Nicholas move away, and they spent $100 million on off-ball linebackers. But people say, and Clay Harbor, our buddy, or former Eagles tight end, look, if they were in Chicago, they wouldn't be playing that well because they have the worst defensive front. The reason Nicholas Morrow is playing this well, he has the best defensive front. He went from literally the worst to literally the best, and he looks better. That's, it's not in a vacuum. And I think, too many people assume, oh, he's playing that way for the Eagles. That means he would play that way for the Bears. No, you already saw the way he played with the Bears.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that connection, right? Nicholas Morrow and Roquan Smith, formerly Chicago Bears. But you bring up a good point, the fact that, with this defensive line, you better be on your P's and Q's at that linebacker position, especially with this defensive line doing what they're doing. But another thing you said that stood out to me was the fact that, look, teams are preparing for this Philadelphia Eagles pass rush. They are the first notion brought up in these meetings are get the ball out quick. You saw it in week 1. You saw this in this previous week, right? This is what teams are doing to the Philadelphia Eagles. If you know that, and I know that, and I have no doubt in my mind that the Philadelphia Eagles know that, why marry yourself to your system or to your scheme to the point where it's hurting your team? And what I mean by that is we saw the pass rush getting there. But when you play so far off the line of scrimmage with your corners, you're allowing these shifty receivers like a Terry McLaurin, like a Jahan Dotson, like a Curtis Samuel. You're allowing these guys to get off the line of scrimmage free without any physical contact, and you're not forcing the quarterback to have to fit the ball into a tighter window. So my thing is, if you know that teams are preparing for this pass rush, if you know their sole goal is to get the ball out quick, why aren't we seeing the adjustments in the secondary? Why aren't they playing closer to the line of scrimmage so they can at least, force the quarterback to fit the ball into a tighter window?
Yeah, they're not. It's the scheme is the scheme, as I said, and they're not changing the scheme. And there's not a lot of press coverage. It's mainly zone coverage.
But does a tweak here and there in the secondary really change the scheme that much, John?
Yeah. From the whole goal of this scheme is to disguise things pre-snap from a coverage standpoint, and then spin off from that pre-snap look to a post-snap change in the coverage. And the whole goal is to make the quarterback sort of think, even if it's just a split second, to slow him down with all these different exotic coverages. And yeah, I'm the first. I don't like it. I don't like the scheme. I talk about it all the time. Too many people play it. To it. It's happened to copied, and then Seattle's cover 3 that everybody copied. Now it's Vic's scheme, Mike Zimmer's scheme back in the day. A lot of people copied. It happens again and again and again, and I think we've hit the tipping point. We're on the back end of the Fangio defense, but the Eagles are playing it, and they're not going to stop playing it. So whether it's too high, they went to some cover 1 variants. They change all the time. Match zone concepts over the first couple drives. Then they were in cover 1 a whole bunch, which is rare for them because it was a young quarterback. They typically wouldn't do it like against Matthew Stafford. They're not going to do that a lot. So it is what it is. But, for the people that constantly talk about press coverage, and yeah, they're not going to do that. So You can bang your head against the wall, but they're not going to do that.
I guess for me, it's like I'm not even asking for flat, like full on press, but can you guys get a little closer to that line of scrimmage? I mean, there was a play that stands out in my mind vividly, because I feel like, are we just going to ignore it down in distance because we're married to our scheme? There was a moment in the game where the Philadelphia Eagles, they forced a 4th and 1. And I believe there was a penalty on Washington's side of the ball, and the Eagles elected to accept the penalty and bring them back 3rd and 6. I didn't understand that in that moment. Forced the other team to have to make a decision, but nonetheless, they accepted the penalty. Now they're 3rd and 6, and then Washington gets another crack at it. They're playing off the line of scrimmage. My thing is, can you guys get a little closer? Can you guys at least play the down and distance? Can you play the chains? Can you do something that at least limits the space that these receivers have?
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're talking about, we'll use match zone. I mean, it's not even about, the corner on that particular receiver. Depending on what the route is, he might be passing him off. He might be. It's again, I think people get too bogged down in he's got to press. It might not even be his responsibility, depending on where the route is going. He might pass him off. There's a lot of complication when it comes, and that's another problem, especially with younger quarterbacks and cornerbacks, and changes when you have backups playing, because communication is a huge part of this defense in the back, in the secondary, and even the back seven as a whole with the linebackers. Everybody's got to be on the same page. There's a lot of room for mistakes, but we heard this all the time with JG. You got to press, you got to get up, it's not what this defense is about. This defense is about, if you are going to go score, it's about limiting explosive plays and, making them go 13, 14 plays with the assumption that over that span, you're going to make a mistake. It might be a false start. It might be a legal man downfield, and get the offense off schedule and get off the field. They're not going to press. It's similar to blitz. Now, that is probably the most blitz you will see all year from the Eagles. Can't say, they might get another young quarterback down the road, but they were up over 30%. And I saw, because I got that question today, they look like they're blitzing more. They're actually blitzing less overall. So, yeah, I mean, and by the way, this is a Nick Sirianni thing. And you see it, and if you watch Arizona, even they're doing some different things than what JG and Nick Rallis were doing here, because now they're in charge. They're doing some different things. He wants this scheme. And, Sean's running what the head coach wants, and that's what he should do. Now, he hired Sean because Sean's a big Fangio guy. So I don't think he would go far away from it anyway. But this is what the head coach wants. And so this is what you're going to get defensively.
Interesting. So we're about to close the show out, John. I got a couple more for you before we get out of here. Like it says at the bottom of the screen, they're 4-0, but the road is going to get tougher, and they're going to start to go up against higher caliber quarterbacks. Right, earlier on the season, it was about the higher caliber coaches, but they're going to start to go up against higher caliber offenses and higher caliber, high caliber coaches. This week they're going to have Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford. Eventually they're going to have McDaniel and Tua, and eventually McDermott and Josh Allen, and so on and so forth. So the road is going to get tougher for this team, and I'll admit I'm a little nervous about this defense when we start to go up against those high flying quarterbacks and receivers. I mean, look, the Philadelphia Eagles are offense. I think they're starting to figure it out. I think Jalen Hurts played his best game of football, especially his best half in terms of throwing the ball. It seemed like he loosened up a little bit in that second half. He got more comfortable. So I expect the passing game. I expect AJ Brown to continue to do AJ Brown things. He had an amazing game. That goes without saying. But again, this road is going to get tougher. How do you stack up the Philadelphia Eagles right now against those teams like the Buffalo Bills, like the Miami Dolphins, right? Like even the Cowboys and the 49ers?
Well, I think that's why the Eagles are so intent on getting the passing game going after the first 3 games, and to a certain extent they did against Washington, because they know down the road they're going to need it playing better teams. Yeah, I mean, Dallas, Buffalo, San Francisco, Kansas City. Yeah, they're going to be able to score some points, so you have to keep up with them, and that's why the passing game is so important. But I mean, I think the Eagles have proven they can beat anybody if they bring their A game.
But that's the problem, right? We haven't quite seen the A game yet. We've been seeing B-, C+ games, and they've still been winning. These teams.
No, but you see that. I mean, you saw Kansas City, right? Everybody's like, people are it's understandable. People are hyper focused on the Eagles because we're in Philadelphia. I mean, Kansas City was awful.
No, yeah. Don't get it twisted, right? It's a lot of teams around here that are not playing their best football right now.
Yeah, nobody.
The Bengals, right? So
the Bengals, yeah, I picked them to go to the Super Bowl, so I put the mush on them, but they look awful. Part of that is Joe Burrow's injury, but
right.
The offensive line's falling apart again. Buffalo, that first game they looked terrible, and now they've taken off again. Dallas had the Arizona game. I mean, people are hyper focused on the Eagles. There's 2 teams that are 4-0.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So everybody has had a poor game. But the assumption, I never understood this. Well, the Eagles, you heard it all last year. The Eagles don't do well against good quarterbacks. Yeah, that's kind of baked into it. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what, but again, if I told you before the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes would throw for whatever he had, 182, whatever it was.
Right.
Everybody would have took it. They said, I'll take that. He didn't have a great game against the Jets, but he found a way to win. Josh Allen, he might throw for 350. He also might throw 3 interceptions because he's that type of player. But good players are going to be, good. So a lot of that is baked in, similar to when somebody's playing the Eagles and, they can't get a sack on Lane Johnson. Well, yeah. I mean, it's been that way for a long time. Good players are good, and other teams have good players as well.
Final question, John, before we get out of here. We have a 4-game sample size for this Philadelphia Eagles coaching staff. You have obviously 2 new coordinators, Brian Johnson on offense, Sean Desai on defense. Sean Desai's defense has been battling injury. Brian Johnson's offense has been battling lack of continuity. And I haven't really been a fan overall of Nick Sirianni's, decision-making for the entire month. He's had moments, obviously, but it's just I have my own opinion about Nick Sirianni right now from a situational perspective. What's been your evaluation of this coaching staff through the first month of football? How would you grade this? How would you grade Nick Sirianni? How would you grade Sean Desai? And how would you grade Brian Johnson individually and collectively?
I think there's been some hiccups, and there should be with new coordinators. That shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. As far as offensively, I've been impressed with the way Brian has taken what the defense has given him. I think that's a feather in his cap. But yeah, you have to get Dallas Goedert involved, for example, and it's just unconscionable that they can't get him involved in this offense. Defensively, a little bit of a curb there because of the injuries and the change in starters, but I think Sean has done a pretty good job as well. But he's got some issues in the secondary, from both a talent perspective and an injury perspective. And when those two clash, you're going to have some issues. As you mentioned, they're 27th in passing defense. Last year, they were number one. So that's a precipitous fall, but I think a lot of it you can put into context, and the fact that C.J. Gardner-Johnson isn't here anymore. James Bradbury's had to move. Avonte Maddox is hurt again. Zach McPherson is hurt. Justin Evans couldn't play last week. You lose Marcus Epps. So a lot of moving parts there. So that's explainable. And then Nick, I don't know. You mentioned like 3rd and 11. Nobody's seen a 3rd and 11 draw play before. I mean, people do that every game across the league. You're trying to fool the defense. Did it work? No. Kenny Gainwell fumbled it. Luckily, Lane Johnson was there to get it. But I mean, they act like that's so crazy.
I think people get upset when they feel like in a crucial situation you're not putting the ball, or you're not trying to get the ball in the best player's hands. I think that's the issue. At least it is for me. At least it is for me.
We in the red zone, for whatever reason, they trust Kenny Gainwell. Maybe they won't because he fumbled the football now. So maybe it'll be DeAndre Swift next time. They're probably still not getting 3rd and 11 on the draw play, but occasionally it'll hit. If it doesn't hit, as Brian said, hopefully maybe you get 7-8 yards. Then you start thinking about going in on 4th down, or you kick the field goal. You're behind the sticks. It happens all the time in the NFL. And then, the assumption that you want to milk the clock. Look, I'm not milking the clock against Sam Howell and the Commanders. May I think about it on, Fitzpatrick Mahomes and the Chiefs? Yeah, then I think about it a little bit more. I want to give him a chance to come back. But you got to step up and remember, AJ can't get the taunting penalty after the touchdown.
Yeah, that can't happen.
A lot of it's execution, most of it's execution, a lot of it's personnel driven, most of it's personnel driven. If he just scores the touchdown, walks off, doesn't get the taunting penalty, Washington doesn't get the head start from the 25 to 36. Yeah, I mean, nitpicking is the right word. People are nitpicking Nick Sirianni. He's got the best record in football. So since he's been here, that's second best, I think, to Andy. But over that span, the 20-1 or 21-1, I forget where we are, the best record. What more do you want? I don't know. I mean, there's things that annoy me about Nick. The fact that he's slavish to competitive advantage, I think, is goofy sometimes, but he's pretty successful, and I can tell you he's not calling plays. So get used to Brian Johnson. He is done with calling plays. I can tell you that 100%. And if somebody else is going to call plays, it's going to be Kevin Patullo or Alex Tanney or somebody else, because he wants to manage the game. But I mean, when people complain when you score touchdowns, you got a good team. You scored a touchdown, but you didn't do it when I wanted you to do it. I mean,
that's funny. The curse of the gifted, John. Like you said earlier, Eagles fans, this market, we're spoiled, man. And there's no shame in my game. I'm a spoiled Eagles fan. I grew up in the era. I grew up in the Andy Reid and the Donovan McNabb era. So I saw a lot of success. I saw a lot of disappointment. You're right. Overall, at the end of the day, this is a good football team. And there's, sure, there are some hiccups along the way, and they kind of, had a bumpy road to 4-1. But a lot of teams aren't really playing their best football right now. Again, it's really early in the season. The first quarter pole of the season is kind of past us, the 17-game season. But close to a quarter of the season being pretty much over and done with. And the Philadelphia Eagles are 4-0, and I think that's something to be proud of. And you can kind of walk into the locker room with your head held high. But this team knows they haven't played their best football. Hopefully,
hey, only one other team can say they're 4-0, and we always got the 49er trolls. So I mean, they're the only other team.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. Hopefully they can keep up the momentum when the competition gets a lot stiffer. But that's going to do it for us today, you guys, on Football 24/7. We really appreciate you guys for locking in on the content. It means a lot to me. You guys are always showing love. I was pretty busy today. You guys saw me on Sports Take with the guys, Rob Ellis and D Gunn. I was on Dan Cilio's show today. Now
you had a longer day than me, man. What do you were you on Colarulo's show too? Did you do that?
No. Actually, I didn't do a Bill's show. Xander is covering Bill's show. So, but yeah, man. Listen, regardless, man, I enjoy it, and I enjoy you guys, man. I get to kick it with some guys that love the game of football, that knows what they're talking about, and it's pretty exciting for me, man. I love picking your brain, John. That's one of the best things about doing this show with you 3 times out of the week. Make sure you guys continue to smash that like button, and make sure you guys are subscribed to the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. So much more content, man. We have Birds 365 with Jody Mack and John McMullen. We have a new show that debuted today with our guy Bill Colarulo, the Philly Sports Power Hour that you're going to have every day, Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, lock in on Birds 365. Before that, at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. After Bill's show, you have Sports Take with a new time slot going from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Time with Derek Gunn and Rob Ellis. And you have Cilio with a longer slot right now going from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. on the National Football Show Eastern Time. We appreciate you guys so much for always locking in with us. Make sure you guys continue to stay locked in on the JAKIB Sports and the Pine League Hockey pre, post, and halftime show sponsored by Ocean Casino, Malamut Law, Pine League Hockey. You guys, the content is flowing at a higher rate, so make sure you guys stay locked in. This has been Football 24/7 with John McMullen, and I'm your guy, Tone DeShields II. One love, stay humble, stay healthy, and most importantly, stay hungry, Eagles fans, and fly, Eagles fly, and we're out of here.